Yo, Chuck, can you hear me? Yeah, we have no sound.
All right, can you hear me now? I think
Yeah, I can hear you.
okay, cool. Sorry about that. That was kind of weird. All right, well guys, welcome to a Sunday edition of the NBA DFS Q&A on YouTube. So, I wanted to talk about the slate last night a little bit where THT and Colin Sexton were two of the top plays that we had on the stream. And when we're recommending that, we're working with the information we have. And, we kind of assumed that THT was going to be starting. He didn't. Either way, Colin Sexton was in the same role off the bench. And we got kind of a wrench after lock with Chris Dunn and Yurtseven being starters for Utah, being the flat min price on DraftKings. And it's just when we get that kind of information, that kind of slate changing news, especially after lock, we have to adjust. And so my adjustment was just I basically had 100% Chris Dunn and I got as much Yurt7 as I had roster spots open on DraftKings. And then with us talking about THT being a top play on the slate, with him coming off the bench, I mean, he's basically in the same role that he's been in, for most of the season, I guess, since he's been removed from the starting lineup. And so we just kind of got to know at that point that THT is not a top play anymore. And we have to pivot to, what is now the top plays on the slate, Chris Dunn and Yurt7. And they came in at crazy low ownership on DraftKings. And even on the night slate, I was kind of surprised how low their ownership came in. And so basically it's just about adjusting to the news and it kind of just changed our whole lineups, because of those two cheap guys. Now we're getting in a lot more Luka. We're getting in a lot more of Paul George and Kawhi last night. Brandon Ingram was already one of our top plays, but I got even more of him than I had previously. And so it just, if you're not sure, that's why we should be signed up for Occupy Fantasy. You can see the model updated. Those guys were both at the top of value. At least be in the Discord so you can see what we're doing. You can ask us in there post slate. One of us is usually always in there to answer questions. And I know that although they didn't quite get there, I'm pretty sure Chris Dunn was still in the 100K winning lineup last night. And it's just a result of him being such a cheap salary that he allowed, I believe it was Ship My Money that won last night to, fit in some other studs in their lineup. And then Jordan Hawkins, the most frustrating DFS play of all time. And that's the guy this year that I never play when he goes off. And then I play him when he doesn't go off. So just a note that be ready to adjust stuff post slate because those guys coming in at such low ownerships, and I know a lot of the times the late swap news hasn't worked out this season, and they didn't quite get there last night, but on the short slate, it didn't matter. They were just so cheap. They allowed us to do a lot more with our lineup. So just a little note about last night's slate, and it's going to happen in the future where we're going to be talking about plays who we're going to be assuming is starting and then don't start, and they're not the plays that we were hoping they would be. So, with all that said, Jayhawk, we have some injury news for today.
Yeah, we got a couple pieces of injury news. And yeah, just to tackle on before we get into that, really crazy night with a ton of injuries. I think we both were talking. We both kind of avoided most of them outside of Jordan Poole. Yeah, pivoting to that late news with the Jazz new starters with Dunn and all those guys was very massive for me. So yeah, like you said, always be in Discord. We're always putting in updates, always being there. And then yeah, in terms of today's slate, pretty couple of pieces of news that I think are pretty integral. So obviously we have Kristaps out and Drew Holiday out, so that's pretty big news for Boston. And then Anthony Edwards is questionable for Minnesota. So definitely a couple of pieces of the news that we need to monitor tonight.
Yeah, Drew Holiday and Porzingis are the big ones, and then I don't think this is like a super big piece of news, but Terry Rozier is available to play today, so we'll have to see how that affects the Charlotte rotation. Miles Bridges has been one of our top plays. I think they finally priced him up to the point where he's not an automatic play anymore. Let me double check. Yeah, I mean 7,500 and 7,100 over on FanDuel. I still think Miles Bridges is still a great play on both sides. Somehow Orlando is second in the East right now, which blows my mind. And they play at a little bit of a slower pace, so I'm hesitant to play guys against Orlando. But I do still think Miles Bridges is slightly incorrectly priced, so we're still happy to get there on those guys specifically. And then the Jordan Poole thing last night, it's so frustrating. Here's another thing with the late swap when half my lineups are dead because a player moved after lock. And I don't know what the NBA can do about it because the games typically start 10 minutes after the listed start time. And I believe Jordan Poole got hurt. The slate locks at 7 p.m. Eastern. Jordan Poole got hurt at like 7:02. There's nothing anyone can do about it. And so it's just I did say someone on Twitter mentioned that it helps us just as much as it hurts us. It just depends on that specific night how much we had of the guy. And so it hurt most of us last night, I believe, but maybe next time that late guy getting ruled out will help us. So it's all going to even out in the end. I think did we have any other guys? PJ Washington is available to play. Grayson Allen is he in the night game? We'll check that might be on the early.
Yeah.
That was in the
he's in that game.
Okay. Phoenix plays New York right at lock, so he's ruled out today. It should be a boost for Eric Gordon. Maybe Josh Okogie gets a few more minutes.
We also have Aaron Gordon questionable. He's projecting for actually a ton of ownership, so if he's out, I think that bumps Jokic, bumps MPJ just a little bit as well.
Yeah, and Aaron Gordon was like 0 for 12 in the last game, 0 14 something shooting. So he had an awful game. So he should just take the night off and just figure that out. But let's go ahead and jump into the guards here. All right, Trey, we'll go ahead and get to the slate. All right, Jayhawk, you can hear me, right? Oh, nope. All right, let me go to the basic one. Jayhawk, you can hear me on here, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool. The other one, I guess not. So let's just talk about the top of the guards: Trae Young, LaMelo, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, Desmond Bane, Jaylen Brown. Anthony Edwards is questionable. I'm not sure what we're expecting with him. Kind of lean towards he doesn't play, I guess, but we'll have to find out when we get that update. And then Jalen Brunson. So these are the guys at the top of the model. Who are your top guys from right here?
Yeah, so I think LaMelo, you did mention Orlando plays at a slower pace, but he's been playing really well. I think at his price points at 10-3 and 9,900, I think he makes sense as a top guard play. And then obviously Jason Tatum with no Kristaps and no Drew Holiday, I think he makes sense as a spend up as well. And then obviously Nikola Jokic, 12%, 17%. I played him last night at really low ownership. And if we do get Aaron Gordon out, I think he looks even better. So I think Jokic makes a ton of sense top as well.
And Trey Hart in the chat asking us to get to the slate. So the reason why I'm talking about what happened in yesterday's slate is because those kind of situations are going to happen again, and it's important to know how to handle those. And so, it's like I said, it's going to come up in the future. And so, if you have a better idea of how to handle that information, how to take advantage of it, then that's part of the edge in DFS. Is late swap is everything. So here with I want to talk about Jaylen Brown a little bit. His ownership is kind of decent. His price came up a little bit, but with Drew Holiday and Porzingis out, he has been off and on this year. But I think he's a pretty decent GPP play today. He's showing up in a bunch of my stuff, and then Desmond Bane, the other kind of chalky pay up guy at the guard, playing against Minnesota. They still have a top defense. It's a low total. But Desmond Bane kind of does everything for this team. It's kind of a tight spread. It's only 5.5 points, so I don't mind getting Desmond Bane there even at that ownership. One of the other guys popping up here, Derek White. With Drew Holiday out, he should have a bigger role. He's been starting. He should have somewhat increased usage, but just keep in mind, he still plays next to Jason Tatum. He still plays next to Jaylen Brown. So it's not a super smash spot. The price is fine, $6,500. The ownership is reasonable, so I don't mind getting there either. And then Terry Rozier coming in at 1% ownership. Now, a lot of time when guys are ruled in, we have to assume they're good to go. Terry Rozier's missed a few weeks, and so I'm not sure if they're going to ramp up his minutes. Be on the lookout if there's any kind of a note on a minutes restriction or anything like that. But at 1% owned, it's a little bit different of a situation than him just coming back because he wasn't playing with Miles Bridges, at the beginning of the season when he was in. So even though he's 1%, not sure it's a spot we want to get to. He is showing up pretty decent in the model, though. And then the other piece, let me just sort this by ownership on DraftKings. So the top two owned guys from Orlando against Charlotte, and it makes sense. Charlotte's a great team to target players against. Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs. Now, I think I prefer Jalen Suggs. This guy just comes out of the gate running. Like, he has more energy than most players in the NBA, right? And he's just putting up stats every night. And 5,500 on DraftKings, 6K on FanDuel. Do you have a strong preference between these two guys, Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs?
Yeah, so I think they're both fine. They're both projecting for a ton of ownership. I think I slightly prefer Suggs starting. Anthony is very solid off the bench, but I think Suggs has a little bit safer of a floor. And then Anthony's obviously going to be the guy with the bigger ceiling off the bench. So probably Suggs for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think it sucks for me as well. And then Mike Conley always seems to be showing up near the top of ownership, and he does have a ceiling, but I don't think that he doesn't get there as often as some of the other guys, and especially at a similar price to Jalen Suggs. I'd prefer to just play more Jalen Suggs, play less Mike Conley. Even with the cake matchup against Memphis, again, this game is a pretty low total. It's the lowest total on the slate, and so it's not a spot that I'm dying to get to. That's probably the only piece of like chalk uh, at the guard spot anyway that I'm trying to avoid. And then Christian Brown's ownership, I imagine this is up here because of the Aaron Gordon uncertainty. Let me see if we have Aaron Gordon in the model right now. So we still have Aaron Gordon in here, but Christian Brown is showing up. It's kind of odd that he's showing up for that much ownership. I mean, you're a Christian Brown guy. Tell me about Christian Brown.
Yeah, so Christian actually, he technically backs up Michael Porter. I still think he'd get a pretty big bump if Aaron Gordon sits, but yeah, he's a guy who can come off the bench. Pretty much their six man, probably going to play around 20, 25 minutes. Pretty reliant off the scoring. He can obviously drive or shoot the three. He has upside, but I would much prefer him if we got Aaron Gordon out. If Gordon's in, he seems like too thin a value to really prioritize on the slate.
Yeah, I'm wondering if his increased ownership kind of comes from three guys on the Nuggets being questionable. It looked like it said Reggie Jackson's probable to play, KCP is probable to play. So it's really just Aaron Gordon that we're not sure about, and it does make sense that Christian Brown would pick up the extra playing time. They can just slide MPJ down to the 4, and then they could play Christian Brown at the 3 or play KCP at the 3. Either way, they can play a 3-guard lineup with Reggie, KCP, and Christian Brown. So I don't hate it. He's shown a ceiling, but these are the type of guys that I try to avoid when they're coming in a little bit higher owned. I know he's done very well recently, and with some increased minutes, obviously has more opportunity to do some stuff. But that's a spot I'm not sure about. I'll have to see how that ownership looks closer to lock. And then from these other chalk guys, do any of these guys stand out to you as a little bit too low owned, or maybe a little bit higher ownership than they deserve?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to play Trey tonight. I want to mention him because I think he's an expensive guard. There's no Drew Holiday, which I think should make the matchup 10 times easier. Derek White should be on Murray, so I think Trey, if you want to take a stab in tournaments, I think he makes some sense. But yeah, I don't know. We kind of mentioned most of the guard players. Obviously, the Orlando guys with Suggs and Anthony, and then LaMelo probably and Derek White is solid. And then I forgot Peyton Pritchard. Pritchard at 49. I think we have to mention him. He's coming off two kind of bad games, but the game before that had a pretty big game. So just gonna throw him out there. He's priced them out, but definitely worth the mention.
Yeah, Pritchard should be in line for a few more minutes tonight. These are the times to target him when Derek White or Drew Holiday are out. It just we even saw one time where I think it was Jaylen Brown that was out, where Peyton Pritchard came in, played very well, and he took some minutes away from Drew Holiday. And so Peyton Pritchard showing up second in the model. We currently have projected for 0% ownership. I imagine this is going to update because, I hate playing Peyton Pritchard, but if he's going to come in 0% owned, even at these prices, like, I'm very happy to get to a bunch of Peyton Pritchard tonight, alongside Derek White, alongside Jaylen Brown. I think that's fine. KCP, top of the DK value, as he always is, 5,100. He's going to look even better with Aaron Gordon out. Maybe he gets a few more shots. Maybe he can get hot from 3. They're going to be depending on him a lot. With Aaron Gordon out, he does a lot for the team. Some of the other guys showing up top of the value. So we mentioned we prefer Suggs over Cole Anthony, but Cole Anthony is looking very good in the DK value, even at this 33% owned. And then one thing I love pointing out, guys, Trae Young, top of the OF index, and he's 5th or 6th in the DK value right here. At 3 and 4% ownership, even though his price is high, even though we don't have like really good value yet. Trey, I mean, these top studs, these are the guys that are going to win the slates when they go off. And he had a really good game yesterday, high paced game against Washington. Obviously, it's a tougher matchup against Boston, but 237 total. Someone has to score the points. It's only, I mean, it's an 8-point spread, so it's not quite blowout territory. It's not exactly tight either. But I always say if the game is within 8 points with 2 minutes left, the starters are all going to be on the court. So it's not a spot that I mind getting to. Uh, Quentin Grimes, another DK value guy showing up at 0%, 3,900. Very boomer bust. I think he's fine as a GPP value play, if that makes sense. Not a guy that we're jamming into our lineups, but a guy that I don't mind pivoting from whatever other value we have to get him a little bit. Who else from the value guys is standing out? Anyone down here?
Yeah, can we? Let's briefly mention Nick Alexander-Walker. I know he's priced up to 4,600, but if Anthony Edwards is out, he should get a usage bump. And then if you really want to get crazy, I think Shake Milton at 3,300. If
Love it.
Anthony Edwards is out, could be a really good DK value.
Yeah, if Edwards gets ruled out, I imagine Nickeil Alexander-Walker's ownership is going to come up from this 5%, definitely. And then even the 24% on FanDuel is going to shoot up. But Shake Milton, he's probably still going to go unowned. He's a better play on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel, especially considering the price difference between him and Alexander-Walker. But this is a great contrarian GPP value play. He's probably going to come in higher than 3% owned if Anthony Edwards is ruled out, but maybe he doesn't. Either way, he's still going to be low owned. And 3,300, we don't have any super deep value like this on the slate yet. And so it's a high risk, but Shake Milton has shown last season, I believe, he was still on the Sixers, and he's shown that he has a ceiling. And if he comes in and plays well, it's reasonable that he could get some extra playing time. We currently have him projected for 15 minutes. We'll wait on the Anthony Edwards news and see if we get that before the end of the stream.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure there's no other guards that we missed here to talk about. You know, DeJounte, I mean, he's always a pivot to Trae Young, but Trae Young's coming in solo, and he's not really a pivot today. I still think he's fine against Boston. Darius Garland, once again, his price is still elevated from Donovan Mitchell missing time. He's 1% owned. I didn't play him yesterday. I'm not going to play him today.
We mentioned Eric Gordon, right, with no Grayson Allen. I think he's in play as well.
Yeah, Eric Gordon. So with Grayson Allen out, it doesn't necessarily give a bump to Eric Gordon's usage, but it's one less guy taking shots, and maybe he's in line for a couple more minutes. We haven't projected for 33 minutes, which is pretty insane for Eric Gordon on the Suns this season, but he's been playing that many minutes. So Eric Gordon, pretty good spot tonight at 2% owned. So lots of really cheap value guys tonight. Not really cheap, but lots of I guess mid-range value guys tonight at the guard spot. Let's go ahead and move into forwards. Make sure we didn't get any news. I mean, very top of the forward model, Jason Tatum. Without Drew Holiday, we saw Jason Tatum absolutely explode a couple games ago. It's a great game against Atlanta. I mean, this feels like one of the top games. I'd want to be targeting a player like Jason Tatum when he's playing in this high total, high pace game. His price seems very cheap. Is this one of your top studs today?
Yeah, I love Jason Tatum here. He's basically my favorite spend up on the slate. Obviously, Trae Young, we just mentioned guard, I think is a good contrarian spend. But yeah, Tatum, no Kristaps and no Drew Holiday. You know, he already was in a good spot here against Atlanta. But with those guys out, I think he looks even better, and he's not too expensive. Like I think he's only 10,200. So I think that's a little bit too cheap for his role in matchup tonight.
Yeah, and my pre-stream build, he's showing up as my most exposed pay-up option. And then just a quick question in chat from Gobbler. Chuck, I remember you saying somewhere you like to use only guards or Cs in the utility. Do I still do that, or do I allow forward in the utility as well? Basically every slate, unless there's something different about it. Maybe it's very rare that there's, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 forwards that I really want to play all in the same lineup. For the most part, it's only point guards specifically or centers in the utility spot. It's just, those are the two positions that tend to score the most fantasy points. And so just, I think maximizing the chances of getting a couple guys who put up a ceiling outcome in our lineups is pretty strong on DraftKings anyway. And then back to the forwards, a couple other low-owned guys near the top. KD, 2 and 5%. I think KD's always fine. Something about playing against New York. Maybe it's a good spot for him. Not necessarily the specific Knicks team, but just playing the Knicks in general. And then Julius Randle on the other side of that game. I still think his price is pretty reasonable, 85 and 83 after that slow start he had to the season. He's really picked it up. Under 10% ownership, it's not a spot I mind getting to. Jaylen Brown showing up very close to the top of the model. We love Jaylen Brown tonight. Aaron Gordon, if he does end up in, I'm wondering if his ownership will come in slightly lower than what's here, just since he's been questionable for most of the day, showing up near the top of the model. I mean, to see Aaron Gordon with this high of an OF index, that's pretty significant, I think. So it's something to pay attention to, especially he's under 7K. Wembanyama, have you been playing much Wembanyama? This is a guy I've had trouble getting to, but he is boomer bust, and he does have that potential ceiling. It's just some nights he's going to sink you, but on the nights he goes off, I mean, he's a tournament winner, right?
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, very boom bust. Yeah, I haven't really got to too much Victor. He's just been priced up. I preferred him when he was closer to 7.5K to 8K. He's almost a 9K now, so he's almost to like these like studs where some of them have safer floors. And Victor, yeah, very boom bust, really tough to click on him here.
So it's interesting that his ownership on DraftKings is 3% versus the 15 on FanDuel, even though the price is pretty similar. It makes sense because blocks and steals are worth 3, and we know that Victor Wembanyama can put up massive stocks, basically against any opponent. They're playing against Denver today. Denver hasn't been great. They're 11.5-point dogs, which is pretty close to blowout territory, but I still don't think it's enough that we're going to shy away from playing Victor Wembanyama if we were interested in him anyway, especially as power forward eligibility. And then Cat's been one of my favorite guys to play every day. He's been very consistent recently. He's put up, almost tournament winning scores almost every single night. And they have a cake matchup against Memphis tonight. Even with the low total, I don't mind getting to Cat at low ownership. Paolo Banchero, I've mentioned before that for some reason, this team is just so much better without Markelle Fultz on the court. It's unfortunate because I love Markelle Fultz, but the player that I think benefits the most is Paolo Banchero, even more so than Franz Wagner. 20 and 29% ownership. So he is pulling to ownership today, but I think his price is fine. I don't think it's enough that we want to necessarily just pivot in most of our lineups to guys like Jaylen Brown, Desmond Bane. I think we can still get to some Paolo Banchero today, especially against Charlotte. Like I said, Orlando's kind of a slower paced team. And so we do want to target these guys when they're playing against teams like Charlotte, where it's just more possessions, it's more fantasy points. Who else from the top of the model list here stands out to you?
Yeah, so you mentioned Franz Wagner. I think he looks pretty solid at 7K. Yeah, like you said, I'm probably going to prefer targeting Charlotte rather than Orlando. Just great matchup. Charlotte doesn't play very much defense, so we have Jalen Johnson out for tonight. So I think Sadiq Bey and DeAndre Hunter,
Nice.
and maybe Bogdanovich off the bench see the biggest boost. So I think both those guys are in play in tournaments. Stiff matchup against Boston, but guys.
Maybe the ownerships will update in a little bit. But either way, Sam Hauser, pretty good forward value play. And then you mentioned with Jalen Johnson being out for 3 to 4 weeks, yeah, Sadiq Bey and DeAndre Hunter are showing up near the top of DK value. And they'll be the top of FanDuel value as well. And DeAndre Hunter is a guy I've been talking about all season that I think that I thought he was going to take the leap with John Collins off the team. And DeAndre Hunter now without Jalen Johnson, he should have some more opportunity. He had a pretty good game yesterday. And it's just so much more opportunity. Like, he should get the minutes. I think he's a great play even against this tough matchup with Boston. I don't really care about that. I just, if he's going to play 30 plus minutes at this price and he's really not pulling the ownership that I think he deserves, this is a spot I'm going to be well over the field on. And same with Sadiq Bey as well. Even if Sadiq Bey is coming off the bench, his price did come up, so it makes him a little less appealing, but he's pulling more ownership than DeAndre Hunter. So I'm just going to get some more DeAndre Hunter, I think.
Yeah, actually, that might be my favorite game to target. Honestly, out of all the games, I think this game should be really fantasy friendly. So really like this calls.
And guys, looks like we're lagging again pretty bad. I apologize for that. There's nothing I can do about it on my end. Yesterday it did clear up after a couple minutes, so just hope you guys can hear enough that it's not too bad. But thank you for staying with us. We appreciate it. Just a couple other forwards I want to talk about. Someone asked about Al Horford in the chat, and with no Porzingis, the 6K price on DraftKings seems kind of insane, but I've talked about this before. I don't mind slightly overpaying for a guy if he's going to come in at crazy low ownership. Al Horford at 2%. The 6K is too high of a price for him, but I really don't mind it if he's going to be 2% owned. I mean, we're taking shots. It's not going to work out sometimes, but Al Horford is a guy that we know capable of putting up ceiling scores. And like I said, Boston versus Atlanta, this is one of the best matchups in the NBA to target, to target players against. And then over on FanDuel 4,900, he's showing up for only 25% ownership. I think he should actually be a little bit higher. To me, this should be the chalk on FanDuel today is Al Horford, and maybe that ownership will adjust in a little bit and go up a little bit more. But I think is a great spot on both sites today. Now, as for rules for which Boston players we're okay having together, I think the only rule I'm going to set is just to make sure I don't have more than, I might do 3, but I think I'm going to stick to 4 Boston guys over on DraftKings. I might do 3, but there's no, like, I don't care about which combinations of guys I'm getting. Even Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, even though it's like Peyton Pritchard is probably the backup to Derek White, but they will see the court together in certain rotations. And so I don't mind having any of these guys in the same lineups together. Like maybe Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I might set a rule to have only one of them, but everyone else I think is, I think the combos are all right.
Yeah, right there with you. Pritchard, and I think he's a little bit priced up now, so I'm going to prefer Derek White, but I think Pritchard still makes sense. They still should see the court, like you said. So I think, yeah, I think they're both sold together. Yeah, and I wouldn't play Tatum and Brown together. I think we really want a ceiling from one of Tatum or Brown.
And then just a couple other guys here. Cam Johnson coming in for 23% ownership on both sides, right around 6K. I mean, we haven't projected for 33 minutes. I think he's a great play at 6K. I mean, he's a guy who has shown a ceiling. Sometimes he's going to bust, but we're playing tournaments. We're playing to win first place. So the times that he doesn't work out, some of our lineups are just dead. But the times it does work out, he's a possible tournament winner. I don't know how he finished yesterday, but he had a really good first half. And so Cam Johnson, now, I hate playing guys from this game involving Chicago at all. I don't like guys from the Chicago side. I don't like guys from the other side. It is a low total, but even at 23%, I think that's okay. And Santi Aldama in a tough matchup against Minnesota. Now, this guy's been a little bit frustrating. Since he's moved into the starting lineup, he's been fantastic. He's only 6K. Coming in at 24% ownership on both sides. It's not a spot I mind getting to either. And then one last guy down here, Miles Bridges, coming in for 2% ownership on DraftKings, 8% on FanDuel. I think it's a little bit too low. He's shown a massive ceiling. I know that Terry Rozier's back. He's going to take usage away from LaMelo and Miles Bridges, but we still are. Yeah, Terry Rozier's going to take away from LaMelo and Miles Bridges, but we still like him at these prices, especially at this ownership. I think it's kind of a mistake by the field if he comes in this low. And just the last guy, Jaren Jackson Jr., been a very frustrating player all year, but his price is coming down. He's 7,400 and 7,800 at around 10% ownership. Spot that I love getting to, one of my favorite GPP plays every night. Yeah, he's been bad. It's not exactly the ideal bounce back spot against Minnesota, but Minnesota's tall. And so as long as Jaren Jackson doesn't get in foul trouble, he has to play. He's projected for 32 minutes. I think it's reasonable he could see a few more, and it's kind of a decent spread. So. And it looks like we're still getting some lag again, guys. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what I can really do to try to fix it right now. I'll have to look into that later. But I mean, thanks for letting me know. Hopefully it clears up again. But let's see. Any other forwards, by the way, before we move on to center?
Yeah. You mentioned Banchero. I think he's a solid forward. Michael Porter, if Aaron Gordon's out, definitely will want to get to some MPJ. And then, yeah, I don't want to touch any of the Chicago guys. Yeah, so probably just MPJ to add on to that.
Okay, nice. Thanks for letting me know that that there's no lag, at least right now, guys. Appreciate you. And then moving on to centers, man, Goga Batadze, the defensive specialist, and centers against Charlotte. It's a little different with Mark Williams in there, but centers against Charlotte still works. And looks like he is the highest projected owned center today on DraftKings. Tell me about Goga Batadze.
Yeah, man, Goga, he's priced him out at 5,100, but man, this is a smash spot in my opinion against Charlotte. Center is not incredible tonight. We mentioned Al Horford's a top play on FanDuel. I think he's fine on DK, but definitely preferred on FanDuel. And then, yeah, I think Goga just makes a ton of sense here, right? Great matchup and decent price tag. So I'm probably going to eat the Goga chalk myself. But what's your take on him?
I mean, so Goga, I think he's a good GPP play every day. When he's coming in at 22% owned, it's not like, extraordinary ownership or anything, but his price is good, 5,200. It's just that he really doesn't score that many points. He doesn't get that many rebounds. We're kind of relying on the stock variance. which is fine because he's going to get there sometimes. And so I don't think I'm going to be much over this 22%, but he's definitely going to be a big part of my builds today. Looking at the other high owned centers, Rudy Gobert, always have a tough time getting to him when he's high owned. But I've been talking about this as a cake matchup for Minnesota against Memphis, and so I don't mind him here at 6,800. The 7,400 price on FanDuel is a little tougher to get to, but again, gets the extra point for blocks over there, so I don't mind it. Jared Allen, this guy's minutes restriction is a lie. I didn't see anything where the coach said he's no longer on a minutes restriction, but this dude played massive minutes yesterday. He played massive minutes 2 games ago. And he did have a really good game against the Lakers, 21-14 with 5 stocks. He put up 53 DraftKings points. He's pulling pretty decent ownership, but I'm kind of surprised if it's not a little bit higher, just given how well he did yesterday. I guess the field isn't chasing as much as they used to, maybe it will come in a little bit higher, but 6,200 and 6,400, especially with this power forward eligibility on FanDuel. Jared Allen's a really strong play today against Toronto. We haven't projected for 32 minutes. It's a 3-point spread, and even though the total is a little bit lower, really like it, especially on FanDuel, where we can still play a regular center next to him. And then Jokic. It's top play every day. Zoef index is insane, like the highest overall on the slate by quite a bit. And so his price is high. We don't have great value to just jam him in today, but we did mention Shake Milton super cheap. We have a couple cheaper guys over on Boston, Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser. And so we can't fit in Jokic today. He's been putting up monster fantasy scores. They're playing a terrible team in San Antonio, but the total is good at 230. They are almost 12-point favorites, and it's just, if Jokic puts up 80-something fantasy points, and even when he doesn't, I feel like it's just a guaranteed just get a good chunk of fantasy points in from one spot. And then if you can hit the other spots, you're great. I think he's just coming in too low owned every single day. I'm over the field on Jokic every single day. Is he in your early build?
I don't have Jokic in right now. I had him in last slate, but I think he makes a ton of sense. I would be slightly worried about blowout. Denver is just coming off a really bad loss, and San Antonio I don't think is that good. So I don't know what the spread is on that game, but I'd be a slight bit worried. But it's a great match for him if they can keep it close. I think Jokic makes a ton of sense tonight.
Yeah, Denver's been struggling against like everybody recently. And so I have no concerns that, they could, obviously, but I'm not really concerned about Denver blowing out San Antonio where Jokic loses some fourth quarter minutes. And even if Denver blows out San Antonio, it's because Jokic probably had a monster game. It's tough to see anyone else on Denver really stepping up. Maybe MPJ has a good game too, but a lot of that's going to come from assists from Jokic. He's going to be a rebounding monster. Just Jokic, 14 and 17%. I know his price is high, 12.8. We don't have the great value to get there, but I think he's such a good play tonight. And he's probably going to be the first person that I start my builds with, at least for my single entry that I hand build myself. And then I want to talk about these next 4 guys: Julius, Victor Wembanyama, Karl Anthony Towns, Pascal. So when they have power forward and center eligibility, there are enough good centers on the slate tonight that I want to do everything I can to make sure they're in the power forward spot. If you're using the builder, you can do, play 1 from this group or play 2 from this group and just list all the other centers that you want to make sure you play. Going back to that question about which positions to play in the utility spot. Tonight is definitely a night where I'm just going to have my utility spot be point guard and center. And I imagine it's going to lean more towards center than it is point guard. Mark Williams against Orlando, he's been a great play. His price is definitely coming up, but he has that ceiling. I don't mind getting there as a GPP play under 10%. Vooch has been so bad, and it's so frustrating again. Like it's really hard to play anyone from Chicago right now, but at these low ownerships, I don't mind getting to Vooch. I think his price is a little bit too cheap, even though he hasn't been really performing recently. Let me see. And then what other centers? We talked about Goga. We talked about Al Horford. Is there anyone else here that you're very interested in?
Yeah, it's really tough. Yeah, Jokic, he's mentioned up the top. Goga, Horford at 6K, I think is fine. Cat Towns, I know you can play him at forward, but I have no Anthony Edwards. I think he looks really, really good. After that, I'm probably not going to play Nurkic. So yeah, probably just those 3 probably are my most exposed centers for me.
Yeah, right now, my top 3 centers on my pre-stream build are Jokic, Jared Allen, and Goga Bitadze. So not getting too crazy there. But another guy that's shown up a bunch for me is Nicholas Claxton. Now he left the game because he tweaked his ankle or something. I'm not quite sure, but he did come back into the game yesterday. And 6,200 on DraftKings, I think, is a phenomenal price for him. 7,600 on FanDuel. I don't think I'm going to get there, but the 6,200 on DraftKings, it's too cheap. I mean, we haven't projected for 27.5 minutes. It's a tight spread. Total's low. Again, I hate playing guys against Chicago, but Vooch isn't exactly stopping anyone. So Nick Claxton, I think, is a really good GPP play today, the center position. And then we talked about Al Horford already. He's just a really good play. Now, I did not notice that he's only center eligible on FanDuel, which I guess that's why he's only 25% owned. If he was power forward eligible over there as well, he should probably be closer to as much as 50%. I mean, he's just too cheap with Porzingis out. But again, the 6K on DraftKings, he's power forward eligible at 2% owned. I don't mind taking some shots on him there.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I haven't been playing too much Claxton, but against Chicago, they're going to need his size against Vucevic. So I think he could get a ton of minutes, and he obviously can produce. Yeah, and then that price gap between DK and FanDuel is pretty big, 1,400 price gap there. So that's pretty large.
And that's one thing I point out. Like, I mean, Nick Claxton is so expensive on FanDuel, but he's so cheap on DraftKings. I mean, just play a little bit more of him on DraftKings. And then, not that Jared Allen's coming in for crazy ownership or anything, but they're the same price. And Jared Allen right now is projected for 3x the ownership of Claxton. Like, Claxton's a really good pivot, or just play both of them in the same lineup. They're both cheap enough and they both have the ceilings. But I do think I'm going to try to have Jokic in a lot of my lineups today. So it's going to come down to a decision of playing Jokic with one of those two, not both of them. But I am going to have lineups with Jared Allen and Nick Claxton in them together. It just seems like such a powerful combo today. And remember, guys, we're here for you. So if you have any questions in the chat, go ahead and throw them in there. I mean, we'll answer them to the best of our abilities. But let's go ahead and start building our build today for DraftKings. So do we think Jokic is in the core today?
I mean, if we can get up to him, I'd love to get Jokic. Yeah. Let's see what we can do.
All right, I'm going to put Jokic in the util since he's in the last game, and I imagine there's going to be plenty of other centers we're interested in. So actually, let's start there. Jared Allen or Nick Claxton for a dummy build?
Ooh. Should we go? Well, I guess we already kind of got a low on Jokic. Should we just go Allen? I like Claxton too. I mean, I'm good with either one.
Yeah, let's start with Jared Allen. Other good option, Goga Batadze, that we both really like today. Maybe we can get down there if we need to save a little bit more salary. And then let's go ahead and start with the Boston guys and see who are the priorities from Boston for you.
Probably Derek White. He's probably my favorite overall play with no hold.
Yeah, Derek White. So he has point guard, shooting guard eligibility. A lot of the time, these guys are going to end up in my shooting guard spot. Let's actually just go ahead and put him in there now, just in case there's another point guard we want to fit in. I don't think we have to go Peyton Pritchard in this build quite yet. Maybe we will. Do we want to try to fit in Jay Tatum? Is that a little bit too much? It leaves us 3,500. It's probably not going to happen on this build specifically.
Yeah, I was just looking at Tatum and Jokic. It's really tough. We could go Milton, but then we got to find a couple other guys that are really cheap as well.
Yeah, and
we could go Brown.
Let's see, Jaylen Brown, 8K. Still leaves us 4,100. Yeah, let's see where that leaves us. And then from the Atlanta side, I do want to run DeAndre Hunter. I'm not sure that he's exactly core, but if I was making I'm in the Discord Q&A after this, guys. And he is in my GPP core, DeAndre Hunter. So I think he's a phenomenal GPP play today with no Jalen Johnson in the lineup. There's not anyone else on Atlanta I'm super interested in. Like DeJounte and Trey are great, but we're already paying up for Jokic, so it's impossible to fit those guys in. And then Saddiq Bey, great option as well. We'll have to see what their starting lineup is. I don't think they're going to start Saddiq Bey just because I think they like to bring him off the bench, but I'm not quite sure who else they'd put in the starting lineup. So keep an eye on that. Let me double check the news and see if we got anything else. We have our Hornet starting lineup: LaMelo, Rozier, Hayward, Bridges, Williams, and so talked about Miles Bridges. I still think he's a great play. And we haven't gotten any more news since then. So what's the next spot that we're at 3,800. So let's just assume that Anthony Edwards is out. And let's go with our 3% owned Shake Milton play down here. We'll put him at the point guard. So it leaves us 4K for each. Let's just go ahead and take a look at the model, just the top overall values on DraftKings. So let me do a refresh. Actually, maybe we got some more information. Yep, KCP's like very clearly at the top of value. Aaron Gordon's pretty close to the top of value. Goga Batadze at center. Peyton Pritchard, Franz Wagner, DeAndre Hunter. Love DeAndre Hunter. Eric Gordon. Sadiq Bey is up there too. Well, again, we'll have to see the starting lineup. If Sadiq Bey is starting, then I think this ownership is more appropriate. But if he's off the bench, he can get there, obviously, but it does seem a little bit high to me. Josh Kogi, 3,700 for Josh Kogi with no Grayson Allen. He should be in line for a few more minutes. How many minutes has Josh Kogi been playing recently? Let's take a
Ooh,
look.
I have no idea. I've not played him in a minute.
Right. So he played 28 and 27 minutes in the last couple of games. He didn't do much with it, but he just barely got to value. We already have like a 3% owned Shake Milton at 3,300. I don't know that we need to go to Josh Kogi, but he's a really good option too as well. I actually kind of want to change Jared Allen to Goga Batadze. The model's telling us Batadze is the better play, and it lets us play another. It gives us another $1,000 in salary to play with. So
Hold on, real quick. Devin Booker out and Anthony Edwards is officially available.
So Devin Booker.
Sorry. Kevin Durant out. I'm sorry. Kevin Durant out. Devin Booker.
Oh, okay.
I totally butchered that. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. No, I see the underdog post. They have a picture of both of those guys in there. So Anthony Edwards is in, so we're not going to play Shake Milton today. Let's take him out. But Kevin Durant out, Devin Booker in. Oh, man. Let's see if we get an update on the model in a minute, because Devin Booker is a guy that I really like to play at low ownership. Like, it's going to be tough. We're already playing Jokic as our super pay up, but even at 10K and 10.3, I'm not saying he's a better play than Tatum. He's definitely not, and that's reflected in the ownership. But at 1% and 2%, if you're making a large set of lineups, I think he's a fine pivot to get to a little bit. His usage is high. He's not just scoring points. He's getting rebounds. He's getting assists. And all right, so I think we're going to have to try and fit in someone from Phoenix now with that news. So
Eric Gordon, too.
Eric Gordon.
I think he gets a bump, too. I don't know if I'd get him in one lineup, but I think he looks a decent chunk better now as well.
It's just, Eric Gordon, he's showing up near the top of value on the model. So let's just trust the model. Let's go with Eric Gordon here. Okay. If maybe we weren't playing Jaylen Brown, I think we're going to have to take out one of these guys, though. So I'm going to take out Jaylen Brown for now, even though he also is showing up, as a pretty good value play at 8K. He's he's the most expensive guy showing up near the top of the DK value, which is significant. And Alexander Walker is still starting. Let's take a look at Alexander Walker. Now, this is the guy, I was not excited to play him when he was super chalk a few games ago. It's just when guys are ruled out, like Jaden McDaniels is out for Minnesota right now. That's why Alexander Walker is starting, but he still plays next to two very high usage guys in Anthony Edwards and Cat. And so I'm not ecstatic about getting to Alexander Walker, and, seeing these recent minutes isn't exactly encouraging. If he ends up towards 33 minutes, this is the first game that Jaden McDaniels was out, but he hasn't touched that since. At 4,600, I think that it's a spot that we don't necessarily need to get to. If he was a little bit cheaper, then yeah, but right here, I don't love Alexander Walker today, and I don't think the model really does either. For a 4,600 guy, where is he? To be this far down the value, that's just the model telling us to avoid him. And so I'm going to listen to the model, even though he's only projected for 5% ownership. The 22% on FanDuel is a little bit different. At the 4,200 price, he's a better play over there, but I'm just going to avoid Alexander Walker today. So we do have 4,900. Let's just... who do we plug in at point guard? Which point guards do we like today?
None of them really stick out to me. I'm trying to figure out who I want to play point guard.
I actually Jalen Suggs is kind of standing out. Jalen Suggs or Cole Anthony. So let's go ahead and plug in Suggs. We both like that.
I like Suggs. Yeah.
And then that leaves us 4,650 for small forward and forward. And for me, small forward is typically the hardest position to fill, unless it's typically the position that I really want to find some value at. And so let's just see what small forwards are showing up at the top of value. Franz Wagner at 7K showing up as a top small forward value. I think that's significant. He is pulling some ownership, so we're not getting great leverage on him or anything. But DeAndre Hunter, yep, we love DeAndre Hunter at this low ownership. And Josh Kogi showing up third in the DK value. Just for this build, since he kind of makes it work, let's go ahead and plug in Josh Kogi. And that leaves us 5,600 for the last forward spot. It's not going to be a clean fit, so maybe you want to change around one of these guys in here. Maybe move Jalen Suggs down to the shooting guard, play Peyton Pritchard instead of Derek White. We do prefer Derek White, but we do get some savings with Peyton Pritchard. Let's see how that looks actually. Point guard, and then we're going to get out of here, and I will be in the Discord for this early lock. So Jalen Suggs, shooting guard, and that leaves us 7,200 at the second forward position. I mean, yeah, we can go with Franz Wagner, top of the DK value. So that worked out. We don't have a Charlotte guy, even though we're running two Orlando guys. I think it's fine. It's not a big deal. If you are running three guys from one team, then you probably want someone from the other team, unless they're like all value. It makes sense that if those three guys all get there, that the game is close, that someone from the other team gets there as well. But yeah, seems like a pretty good build.
Yeah.
So like pretty happy with that. Before we get out of here, Jayhawk, any last thoughts on today's slate? Appreciate you all being here. It looks like we have a healthy amount of viewers. And so, we're here every day. We're usually here at 5:45 Eastern. We started an hour earlier today because of the earlier lock. But if you're interested in the model and what we're doing here, and days like yesterday, like it's really important to see how the model updates after getting late news, especially slate changing news. You can sign up for Occupy Fantasy as little as $7 a week. I mean, it's $1 a day. You can use the model. There's instructions to join the Discord below. You can ask us questions. We're in there all day, every day. I mean, I haven't seen a question that hasn't been answered yet. And then, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, get notifications when we're going live. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. And then final thoughts. Gonna have a ton of Derek White and top. I say this all the time. Top plays on the model, typically the top plays on the slate. Check ownership. Try to get most of the chalky guys in there, and then differentiate in one or two spots, and you're golden in tournaments. So. Yep.
And on that note with the model, I will say that, a lot of the people watching, you've probably been subscribed to one of the other DFS sites out there, whichever one it is. And I think it's such an advantage to use a model just because it's going to give you different builds than every other site. And it's like, you really don't have to do as much to get different. You're just kind of automatically going to be different. Especially we have our lineup builder in here. If you have questions about that after signing up, go ahead and throw it in the Discord chat. We're happy to help. But I think this is just such an advantage. We don't have the traditional projections, but seeing it laid out like this, you're going to get different builds, and just being different is good while still playing the best plays. So I think it's pretty powerful. Appreciate you guys. And is Jop a good value on FanDuel? Let's take one quick last look at Jop. K-Debates Jop, he had a pretty decent game on the last time out, 4,200, 4,600 without Grayson Allen. It doesn't look like the field is getting to anyone on Phoenix. This isn't updated for Kevin Durant being out, so I'm sure that will change. But if his ownership stays pretty low, I think he's a pretty good play. Yeah, I mean, I'm more comfortable playing him than I am a Kogi, despite the price difference. But Bates Diop looks like he's going to end up being a pretty good value play. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in today, and we will see you tomorrow.
See you guys. Thank you.